Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back to the Summit 5 Southeast Asian Qualifiers. We're going to be looking at the lower bracket matchup today. It's going to be MVP.Phoenix facing off against TNC Pro Team. I'm Lyrical, joined today by Scantzor. Already a good way through the draft, as these teams did not really have any fuss or muss. They ran right through their reserve, or through none of their reserve time. And Ancient Apparition first pick, Nature's Prophet, Earth Spirit, and the Batrider. But now that's out of the way, these two teams have a storied history. Is there any way you can break it down before the draft ends? I know they're going quickly.
I have quite a lot to say, although at the moment it seems like our call is kind of, I don't know, I can't hear you entirely properly.
Uh-oh.
I don't know, just speak again. Let me see.
Hello, Scant, are you there?
Yeah, it sounds fine now. Okay. So these teams, they clash against each other all the time. They have been for the longest time. TNC, given credit directly by MVP for a lot of the success that they've had, and TNC have not been able to have the same kind of success, mostly because they haven't been to the same kind of lands. TNC have a Mineski-shaped problem, and very often in qualifiers, they just get stopped down by Mineski, whereas like Fnatic, MVP, probably stronger teams than TNC on balance. Mineski, I'm not sure that they are, but it's a matchup that TNC seems to struggle to get past, and so there's many lands Mineski keep qualifying for, most recently the Manila Major, ahead of TNC. But in terms of their actual capability, in terms of their playstyle, they're very similar to MVP, and that's largely because MVP have drawn a lot from TNC. I mean, earlier today, you and I in the previous series were saying, wow, MVP first pick A, look at this, TNC first pick A. It's like these teams, and this is something that going way back in the past TNC used to do, because they always prioritized the long-range heroes. AA being one of them. Even their draw strategy was kind of about long-range heroes. They liked the Spectre strategy, Storm Spirit strategy for the long-range initiation. Something TNC have often really liked. I will say that recently in the matchup between these teams, they've played a lot, and TNC have mostly been coming out on top. I believe that TNC won when they played in the Starlighter qualifier. They won previously a few days ago in the Summit, the first match where they played each other. I think TNC also won the WCA match and the BTSC match. But yesterday, the most recent ones between the two teams, in Nanyang, MVP actually won. And in that last time, in the last two matches TNC have played against WG Unity and Fnatic, they've lost. MVP, on the other hand, they're kind of on the up. So if we look at very short term, like the last day or two, MVP, the team that's kind of looking harder than TNC. But if we look slightly more medium term, TNC have actually been coming out on top of this matchup.
Well, and it just goes to show that it's really even. They're two teams that obviously experiment a lot, have their own styles that they want to try and play, and I feel like they match up well against each other. Whereas with TNC, I don't know if it's necessarily something to do with a confidence issue or maybe just a bad matchup with Mineski, but it always feels whenever they play any other team, they just have this tremendous power they just do really, really well, and then for some reason they just don't match up well against Mineski, and because of that, we saw in the Manila Major qualifiers they're not going to be going to the Major. Mineski are.
Yeah, I think it's because, I mean, they're both Filipino teams, and Mineski is kind of like represents the existing leadership of Filipino Dota. It's been there forever. They've been the major brand. Everyone followed them. The players have been there a long time. I mean, Cast, who plays for Mineski, is the oldest player going into the Manila Major. He's 29 years old, and he's kind of that guy who's like brought up a lot of the current talent, including TNC players, Execration players. Like, they've all been kind of mentored by that guy. I mean, if you have a 15-year-old player, 16-year-old players, and there's a 29-year-old who's been in the scene that long, so there's a kind of psychological thing where TNC just struggling to break through in that matchup. But luckily for them, this is not that matchup. This is MVP. This is a matchup they're comfortable with, and they've traded blows back and forth many times in this matchup. As I was saying in the previous cast, there's been everything in these matches, from base races to 8-minute raxings to level. I mean, I think the last time I cast these teams, QO was TA in the mid lane against T Blink Slark, and the Slark first blooded the TA at like level 1. It was like there's some crazy stuff that happens in these matchups, and there's certainly potential for either team to be explosive and just like dominate, but it goes both ways, and we also do get those exciting games sometimes where it's like it's going both ways inside a given game.
Right. Well, we'll see if they're going to be able to bring that out. And already a couple of interesting things sort of sparking my curiosity. We've got TNC heavily committing towards having a vision advantage with the Batrider and the Night Stalker both getting taken. It feels like that was just right off the bat something that they're highly prioritizing. And then likewise, MVP.Phoenix, the first pick, Nature's Prophet, a hero that really, well, first phase pick, I should say, but it's a hero that's to a large extent fallen off from where it was, whereas I think in the last patch it was like probably probably the most either picked or banned, or one of the top heroes that was picked or banned across all regions just because of that versatility, and showing that it still can be a valuable pick. They've got kind of what looks to be maybe a more emphasis on trying to take objectives and maybe split pushing with finding a couple of picks in the jungle with Clinks. What's your read on this so far?
Well, I will say that TNC is probably the team that's played Clinks more than anyone else in this region, so they'll have a decent understanding of how the hero operates. I haven't actually seen MVP run it match themselves, to be honest. I think this might be one of the first times I've seen them play it. The first picks, I mean, Nature's Prophet first pick, AA first pick, they both do something kind of similar. They give you power in terms of like long range fighting, being able to contribute to the fights from across the other side of the map. Nature's Prophet can TP in as well, but it's a similar kind of like, if a fight breaks out anywhere, we want to make sure that we can be involved. And the one side you've got Nature's Prophet, you've got an Earth Spirit, the other side you've got the super fast Night Stalker, the Bat that could probably get a blink, Earth Spirit can jump around, the ALT. I think TNC probably actually match up really well here against MVP in terms of like they're making sure everyone's involved in the fight whenever there's a fight, because MVP still have, for example, a Lion who needs to actually be there. The Lion doesn't have a way to like, oh, there's a fight somewhere else, suddenly I'm there or involved. Doesn't really have that mobility until he gets the blink, which is going to take quite a while.
And there's ways that every single one of TNC heroes can kill off the Lion, with the exception maybe the Ancient Apparition. But even Ancient Apparition can be a part of those ganks even from afar, as you were saying. So now these four heroes all feel like they could solo him if Lion gets a little bit out of position. So another strong pick here, the Queen of Pain. Probably going to be going up against the yet-to-be-determined MVP.Phoenix mid laner. Is there anything in particular that you would want to see at this point, something that you feel like MVP is lacking, or do you feel like it's kind of wide open?
5 seconds.
I'm not too sure. I mean, I personally just favor TNC's draft in a pretty big way right now. I think that they just like... These matchups are usually very much about fighting, and I think that the fighting tools are much more diverse and dynamic for TNC, so... I do expect this pick to be like kind of a big deal pick, that it does quite a lot. We talk about like control. Nature's Prophet doesn't really provide control. There's certain situations where Sprout helps, but against this lineup it's not going to do much at all. And Clinks doesn't provide control, it's just damage output. So it's the Earth Spirit and the Lion who have a lot of pressure on them to do all the control elements, and I guess I'd like it if MVP had a pick here which had some kind of control that it imposed, and they go for the Phantom Lancer, which again it's a real classic in this matchup. These are the two teams that sort of started off doing the PL mid. It came from them. Kyo is going to be playing the PL. I'm assuming it will be mid again here, and it is a PL into an Ember Spirit, which historically people think Ember Spirit is a counter to PL. I can tell you now that statistically PL has got a pretty good win rate against Ember Spirits. I haven't checked recently, but the last time I checked in the previous patch it was favorable for Phantom Lancer, and part of the reason for that is that what people don't think about is what happens when the PL goes on the Ember. You know, if the Ember goes on the PL, obviously later on in the game, your slights are wiping through the images and really abusing the fact there's a lot of targets to cleave off. But if the PL jumps on the Ember Spirits, and the Ember Spirit has just used the slights, he can't do anything, because you slow him and you purge him, and then your Spirit moves really slowly, and you just get burst down almost instantly by the PL. So that's a matchup that actually does go both ways.
Well, and it also depends upon what state in the game you're in. I think that in the really super late stage, obviously, if you have a Rapier on Ember Spirit, you're going to destroy all those illusions, as you said. But it's that timing window before the first big damage item comes out on Ember, or even when he has his first big damage item after the Battle Fury, where you're going to be in a good position. And I feel like Lincoln's... Well, maybe not Lincoln's. Ember Spirit might need to go for something in this matchup, because already the Lion being able to have that instant control, I feel like so often in Ember Spirit drafts, if you end up losing that Ember at any point in time in the game, it just is such a detriment to your general flow of the game as well. So he might need to build into some type of defensive item before he goes straight into a big Daedalus or something else along those lines, but you never know. There's a chance that he might be able to do it, and we'll see if MVP is going to be able to take advantage of that. As far as taking objectives go, that's the one thing that I would say is I'm kind of curious about. It doesn't feel like TNC's draft are capable of being forceful with it in the same way that MVP are. You look at a Nature's Prophet, for instance, TPing behind an off-lane tower and just trying to summon all those treants and push them down. Is that something that you need to be worried about in TNC's lineup, or is it just team fight forever and then take objectives as 5 afterwards, or as multiple heroes afterwards?
I mean, it's a concern. It's certainly a concern. It's the one unique thing going for MVP's draft this game, that they they've got fighting elements, but they also have pushing elements to split up the game. Whereas TNC, it really is just about winning through fighting and building that into objectives. But the fighting elements that they have on TNC are actually just so superb that it's probably good enough, I would say. And what you should note is also an interesting factor, which people who aren't familiar with TNC might be surprised by this. It's going to be T on the Ember Spirit in the mid lane and Raven playing Quap in the safe lane, and that's just I don't think they ran T on the Quap at all. It's almost always the T playing the carry hero in the mid lane. Sometimes they have two carry heroes, but you could tell from the draft immediately. I could have said that this would be a safe lane Queen of Pain, and that also does add something to the dynamic, because the off lane Nature's Prophet will probably have a more difficult time in this lane than what a Nature's Prophet usually has, because the safe lane is a Queen of Pain.
I do like the Nature's Prophet against him, though, in general, against the Queen of Pain, that is, because, Raven is not going to be able to easily deal with these treants, and you don't want to have to, they don't provide the same type of problem that, for instance, the kill potential of a normal lane would, because Quap can normally blink away, but if you just have slow chip damage over time coming out from the treants, that's much more frustrating to deal with. And meanwhile, also in the mid lane, you can see Dubu already causing a little bit of trouble for Teehee here, and with the help of the Earth Spirit, this should definitely not be quite as good for the Ember Spirit as some people might think.
Yeah, and this is this is always an exciting mid matchup to watch, because Teehee and Kyuho are probably the two out of all the mid players in the world right now. I think they're the two that are most bloodthirsty this early on in the game. They another roll in, but not going to do anything with that one. These are mid players who really want to make kills on each other in the super early levels, and even when they're playing heroes that you don't expect to do it, it happens. So it's a lane where you want to make sure you don't miss the action if it suddenly comes out.
Well, thanks for the heads up. I'm going to keep my eyes on that one. Always good to not get caught in the T-Tor's action, but Teehee continuing to just try and get under the level there. The off lanes, I feel like, are going to have a decent-ish time. Sam already in a pretty good streak, and actually they're going to wrap around here. The roll-in is going to end up being able to connect, and Teehee taking a little bit more damage, but it looks like for now the Night Stalker is going to keep everything okay. It's kind of a weird combo, though, because he's just been jungling away and just picks up some tangos, so he's going to continue to try and, I guess, jungle and move into mid as well. He's only got level 2.
Yeah, I mean, what's happening here, I believe there was I think it was the last game of the Chinese finals yesterday that I was talking about how it was a big deal for wins that VGR went for the Night Stalker and didn't get enough out of it, and then they were losing. They were the ones being greedy in the lane stage, being pressured, and that's kind of why the Earth Spirit's been rolling in onto the mid lane over and over and over, because the Night Stalker's farming the jungle. We go to the mid lane again. They're trying to kill each other. I told you this. These players, they just, and it now turns around on Teehee, and he might be in a little danger. 4AF TP's in as well, and I think that's a dead Teehee.
Oh, walk-in? He's just gonna be able to get away. Yeah, the rotation does not end up working out, and my God,
that's a win for TNC, right? Because he nearly kills Kyo, but it's on his own. They turn it around, nearly kill him, but that's with two heroes rotating, and actually both of them live, but the rotation from MVP much more costly.
Good stuff back and forth. Again, the maximum amount of value. The little chip damage back and forth here, and end up popping the Flame Guard. They back out. Up in the top lane, there's still not quite nearly as much aggression. It doesn't really feel, though, like the kill is necessarily going to be there as of yet, but it's just, like you said, it's not the matchup you would normally expect there to be a kill, but it's getting close to happening.
Yep. But going back to the point I was making before, the Earth Spirit's trying to be very involved, and MVP are trying to be very involved, because they know that there's a Night Stalker who's being kind of greedy, spending a lot of time farming the jungle, and when nighttime comes, that greed kind of disappears. Like, as soon as the first night comes, Night Stalker is just like a super strong early game support. And so usually in that first daytime, when you're against the Night Stalker with the early Iron Talon, you just feel compelled to get something done. And on that basis, TNC, I would say, have an upper hand early on in this game, because MVP have not gotten anything done during that first daytime. They've got plenty of farm on the board, but so do TNC, and they would have wanted to have set up a kill by now, I think, for MVP.
Well, it doesn't seem like that's going to be entirely possible until we do end up getting the nighttime come through, and then probably see something else as they're going to want to get aggressive. But maybe a double bluff could come out as well if they try and rotate in towards the mid lane. It looks like, at least for the moment, the Earth Spirit as well as the Lion are going to secure the rune up here in the top lane or in the mid lane for QO. So Decent start again, and we're looking at the CS so far, fairly even across the board, at least between the Queen of Pain and the Clinks. You can see that in the mid lane, at least, the PL a little bit further ahead of the Ember Sphere, but nothing really to write home about as of yet. What do you feel like is going to be the big rotation? Like, do you think that we're going to see the Queen of Pain try and make a rotation when she gets level 6, or is that not really in the cards so much?
It's very possible. It's very, very possible, especially with the Night Stalker up in this top lane. I think Queen of Pain could be coming up sometime soon. And the game, like, now that it's, I was talking about daytime, MVP want to get something done. Now we are in the first nights, and I think MVP is very aware that it's TNC with the initiative. And MVP will just try and make sure that they don't offer any openings for this Night Stalker.
Yeah, very tense game already. You can tell the pressure is there across the map, and with Forever always able to blink in or another TP in, it's certainly something where you can find a kill in a very quick order for MVP.Phoenix. But for now, at least, they're just continuing to get their farm on, not wanting to put themselves in a bad position for a little bit later. And again, T just popping that Flame Guard, messing with QO in the mid lane. God, it's just nobody wants to make a move that's out of place here, and Quap does have the TP scroll. We'll see if she ends up trying to head out.
It's kind of funny, this game, it feels so tense so early on, and like I almost want to describe it as action-packed, even though there's been no kills. there's no first blood in the first 5-6 minutes, but oh, there we go.
Good stuff.
We're gonna get the Nature's Prophet, and this was, she had a TP, she could go somewhere else, but this was, the Nature's Prophet has been reduced in terms of his farm quite dramatically because of the Queen of Pain being a strong laner, and as soon as she gets level 6, the burst damage is just too much.
That was a very, very rapid one, and Cuckoo now actually going to spot out QO and might be in a little bit of trouble. He ends up going for the Doppelganger. They spot out which one's real. He's taking a lot of damage, and he might end up going down. Needs to deny himself to these Ancients, and it is going to end up happening. He gets the deny, and now Forev in a lot of trouble himself. He's going to try and TP away, and I think he is going to be able to get out. So, again, a kill, but not a huge one as he was able to deny himself.
Yeah. And well played by Forever to TP out immediately after the Void. That's how you play against the Night Stalker. Unfortunately, it's the A and the Quap there for TNC because both the other heroes, the Ember Spirit and the Bat, are able to stop the TP plan, or actually Bat not quite yet. I mean, like the Nature's Prophet, he's kind of under-leveled. He's been getting the value he's got, but he's an off-laner, so he has off-lane value. Nothing like earlier where we saw the off-lane faceless Void just kind of dominating.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that was a pretty impressive showing that we saw. Again, QO just testing Teehee in the mid lane, but the big story is already MVP trying to pressure in this tier 1 tower in the off lane. They're going to have a catapult now, so they definitely can make something happen, and with the ward up, this is potentially going to be a little bit dangerous for Sam in this off lane. They pressure it in again, and he's just going to end up going for the Firefly, but you can also see the aggression being mounted by TNC in their own off lane. But yeah, Nature's Prophet coming in, and this should be a quick and easy tower, I would imagine.
Yeah, interesting to note the skill board on MP on the Clinks. I've seen this occasionally on Clinkses, not maxing the Searing Arrows, getting a second skeleton walk point early. Sometimes I've even seen a third, and it's usually indicative that you're not planning to sit and just farm. You're planning to get involved early on, and not surprising at all with the two teams that we do have here. I think both teams are very aware of the fact that if either of them gets a sort of brawling advantage, early momentum advantage, it can be really big.
And I wouldn't say that the off-lane tower here is necessarily a big advantage either. This is something that was always going to happen given the draft, and there's other ways for the side of TNC to try and take an advantage, as we saw by that Queen of Pain kill in the off-lane, where you just jump forward, throw out the Sonic Wave, and it's pretty easy. But whereas you have the Nature's Prophet and the Clinks who are going to be able to take that tower every time. So again, just little trades here and there, but it's pretty normal given the drafts. The Teehee is going to move in, cut the creep wave, and this is much more the way that TNC are going to try and take objectives as opposed to the Nature's Prophet way.
Yep, just all group up together. It's a lot more difficult. Nature's Prophet ulti comes out to push them back. Clinks has TP'd in, has that medallion up, so MVP recognize exactly what you're talking about. The TNC have a disadvantage in terms of taking towers, and they're trying to actually maintain that. TNC were sort of, if we work hard, we can still get the tower trade-off, and MVP is saying, well, if you work hard, if we're also working hard, you still won't, and maintaining the advantage that they do naturally get from their heroes MVP.
And Teehee is fairly low here, but Shouldn't be too much of an issue. Kilo does have a level 4 Spirit Lance if he gets a little bit too far forward. Oh, a really good scan there, realizing exactly where they were going to be. But MVP still placing the ward. They might be setting up to see if they can make something happen. Raven going to end up backing out again for the moment. So MVP not going to be able to find a kill. And this is what you would want to normally be able to do as Clinks, is find a kill at this point when you make that rotation in towards the enemy jungle. But not the case this time around, and it looks like they're just going to have to content themselves with just the tier 1 tower here, which I think that they're fine with. Again, MVP, this is what their draft is about.
Yeah, the big deal for TNC is going to be that AA level 6 timing, which is coming pretty soon. They've picked up 2 smokes that are coming in the career, and so TNC definitely planning to get aggressive with, I'm not sure, maybe with the Night Stalker level 6 the next night, or even just once AA gets level 6.
Yeah, that 12-minute mark could be really important, depending upon how it goes. But you can see already the taking over of the jungle from MVP, and I'm not exactly sure the way that you want to try and respond to this. If you're a TNC, it does need to wait until that Ancient Apparition level 6 comes in, but as you said, it's also not necessarily the greatest time in the world to smoke because they don't have level 6. I think this is a good answer. They're going to go up top. They know that there's only one hero up there for the moment. That's going to be Febby, and they're at least going to be able to secure the tower, because I don't think that MVP can try and TP in and defend this, but in the meantime, they're instead just going to move on in and take Roshan.
This is actually a pretty sneaky rush. It's awkward. I mean, look at this. The Clinks has run out of mana. Because they have the Medallion and Nature's Prophet can keep summoning Treants, they can take the rush. But it's not like a super fast rush kill. It's just like a thing that they can do.
Oh, Raven, he's going to be able to survive on 40 HP. Oh, that was a really close to a kill. If they would have had Nature's Prophet ulti at that point, but he had it off, he didn't have enough mana for it. You're just talking about that.
Yeah, they had to spam the entire mana pools to get this rush. It's one of those situations where it's like, you know, it's a pretty edged case of being able to take the rush this early on, so TNC might not have anticipated it at all, and bad news for TNC, they didn't even get the tier 1 trade they usually expect, and mid lane now it's AU's in big trouble.
Well, Kyo ends up losing his life for it, so a little bit far forward. I'm not exactly sure about that whole sequence of event there. I mean, at a certain point, he had to go in for something more because he was already too far committed, but definitely not worth it to get the Night Stalker for your PL. So, kind of an interesting scenario.
It's typical Kyo. It's like, I mean, he bought his boots of travel, he didn't have any gold to lose. It's not that bad, but it's also just like the nature of the player. That's how he wants to play. It's how that mid lane plays. We saw T doing the same thing early on. But we haven't said, okay, so Queen of Pain ulti is up again, and we've got the Ice Blast up. If you're TNC, Nighttime is about to come in. Batride is very close to Blink. So there's a sweet spot coming for TNC for sure.
And also, likewise, a little bit of an unfortunate timing because you would think this is normally the moment where they would want to get aggressive, but it's much more difficult to do that because of that Aegis taking by MVP. So a little bit of an unfortunate timing there, and I think pretty well thought out by MVP to make that move. And it looks like they're actually going to be looking for a kill. This could be scary if they all go into it. I mean, an Aegis doesn't necessarily negate the fact of an AA Blast comboed with everything else, but they're going to try and jump and get this Ember. Oh, the stun. They're going to be able to get him. He drops down really quickly. Hex comes out as well, and there's no response.
Yeah, that was a mistake. He definitely thought he'd be able to just, like, throw out a slice and jump back to his Revenants. And the reason that TNC didn't commit to a full fight there is the Bat needed to go back to base to get mana. Like, he had finished farming his Blink, but he had no mana at all. I do think that even despite the Aegis, TNC in a position where they could definitely win a fight right now. I think it, as I said, it's kind of a sweet spot timing for them. But they got to be careful not to get caught out now while the Everspirit's still dead, as short as his time is.
Well, Dubu gets jumped in on. There's going to be the A Blast going to only hit onto him, but Sonic Wave's still up. It doesn't look like they want to go for it. They're going to pull back Kyo. He's in a lot of trouble there. Do have the Doppelganger away for the moment, but Sonic Wave comes out, bringing him low. That's going to be a kill, and Ancient Apparition was the one that picked it up. Now MP also in a lot of trouble. You talked about the danger of their side and how much they're doing right now. That's the Aegis already gone. I don't think that they're going to be able to quite catch up to Febby, but this should still be a dead Clinks as they've already laid down the sentry, and there he goes. MP ends up falling, killed twice.
Yeah, it's a really big timing for TNC, and MVP had kind of had their first big timing already. The next one probably comes when Lion gets his Blink. But even so, this is what I spoke about in the draft. In terms of straight up sort of fighting into each other, I do think the TNC are the ones with the better draft. Where MVP's draft is an advantage is in terms of like the split push scenario, in terms of getting around the map with the Nature's Prophet and applying pressure, and even with the PL with the Boots of Travel. And we have already seen them doing that. They're the ones with the tower advantage, but they need to start being a little bit more careful when it comes to these all-in fights, because MVP, like TNC, they're a team that instinctively wants to just take on those fights, and I think we are at the point where the fights are just more difficult for MVP. They need to play a little bit better to win them.
I think Forev is going to end up falling here as he TPs away, but already had the Ice Blast on him. Never mind, he actually gets out, so pretty close to it, but is going to be able to escape. The Queen of Pain was not able to quite run him down. The one thing that I would say about the lineup of MVP that you have here is they do have to play around these cooldowns. You've got A-Blast, which isn't incredibly long. You've got Play Molassa, isn't incredibly long, but particularly right now, the majority of their damage is that Sonic Wave, and actually going to be able to jump onto Raven in a lot of trouble, just going to explode their Finger of Death. Oh, a big A-Blast is going to come through, connects onto 3, debuff applied, Dubu dropping low, and he is going to fall. Meanwhile, QO getting ran down, and oh my goodness, TNC just doing too much damage. That's going to be 4 dead rather rapidly, and Cuckoo did so much damage that fight.
Yeah, I do feel like it's a strange thing that MVP are forcing these fights. I mean, it's MVP who went into the position to start both of these recent fights, and I think that they're misjudging their ability to... I mean, maybe they're just backing themselves to sort of outplay, but the problem is that there's so many... Like, all 5 of TNC's heroes have a dramatic impact on a fight like that at this stage in the game. So you take one out early, it doesn't matter, because the other 4 still do so much. And there's an interesting little fight here between the Nature's Prophet and the Bat Rider. Initially, it looked like Sam H didn't even see him, and just got poked a bit and then pulled back. And it's going to bring the entire MVP team down to this Radiant jungle. And it is like TNC still haven't killed a tower. That's still a disadvantage that they're at. It's why the gold and the XP not... I mean, the XP they have a lead. The gold is still kind of even though they've won 2 big fights in a row, because they, as you said earlier on in the game, they struggle to get objectives. There's an AA blast up into this PL, and if he gets silenced by Nightstalker...
Oh, good dodge there for QO, but they also killed off the A on the other side of the map, so they trade 1 for 1. That was kind of a nice little play there, and it should ensure a tier 1 or tier 2 tower in the mid lane, I would imagine, with no A blast. They do have Darkness and Sonic Wave, maybe not. They actually need to back out here, I think. Febby and Dubu could be in trouble. They're going to jump forward, and oh, a nice Hex, but looks like Raven's going to hop on in and trying to chase them down. They do have the Sonic Wave, but I don't think they actually even need it. They're just going to be able to kill off Febby and run down Dubu. Man, and this still leaves open that timing for a huge play here if they need to be able to defend another tower.
Yeah, it is still another tower that goes MVP's way, and this is kind of like the overall dynamic of the game so far is pretty... It's quite simple. It's TNC getting much more value out of going for fights and kills, but MVP getting much more value in terms of taking objectives, and it's sometimes difficult to tell which of those things is more important, because when you've killed so many enemy towers and you still have your towers up, you have so much access to the map, just in terms of like TPing around, getting to different lanes, you have more vision, you have more control, and it becomes more difficult for TNC to orchestrate the kind of fights where they have their advantage. So if MVP keep giving them those fights, they're probably going to keep winning them. But if MVP now start to grind out an advantage just economically and occasionally take the fights where they're strategically advantaged, that makes the game difficult for TNC actually. You know, well, TNC have to find openings.
I would agree, and the thing that we do have that's sort of nice about it for TNC is that they can't afford to just blow those ultis pretty soon by Queen of Pain, because she is going to be having that Agnum Scepter, rushing it quickly after the treads and the Null Talia with the wand. So this is a lot of damage that comes out rather rapidly, and it looks like they're going to try and go for a Smoke Ink with 4. Even though they don't quite have that Agnum Scepter. But man, if they could catch QO here, this would be so huge. He's actually already died 5 times, which has been a bit of a tough one, and is trying to finish off that Diffusal Blade. Already the 2 Blades of Alacrity finished, and looks like, again, they're seeing if they can find it. They're going to be able to pull him back, and this should be a quick and easy kill. No need for nothing, no fuss, no muss. They take him down.
Yep. Again, not an unusual sight in this kind of matchup, especially for QO to get lots of deaths, because it's kind of not QO style to be like, okay, I'm going to be super conservative this game because we're against TNC. He just fights into it, and sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't. He puts himself out there, and it certainly in this case gives TNC opportunities to find the important pickoffs. But it's one of those things where, like, Eternal Envy's a player, for example, who's talked a lot about this, especially when it comes to like Ember Spirit. Often the best carry players are the ones who put themselves out there and just barely escape each time. We saw the previous time, is this AU getting caught out? It does look like it. He's going to die. But We saw the previous gank attempt from TNC at the top lane where Kyo dodges it, and that's actually really big value for his team when you commit to that gank and he dodges it. And it's kind of like, when he dies, it looks like, what's he doing there? Why is he in a risky position? But what we don't often acknowledge is the value that a good carry player can generate when they go into a risky position but avoid the gank anyway.
Yeah, it's a really important point, and we've seen that, of course, that even though he has died, they've also been able to take objectives off the back of that. The fact that he's constantly been moving around, and there's only 2 tier 2 towers left up with a fairly even net worth advantage. It's about 1,000 into the favor of MVP because of those towers, and an experience lead of this much is not super significant at this stage in the game. You're just now hitting those level 2 ultis that are starting to come up, particularly for the Ancient Apparition, and not so much the Night Stalker. A little bit of extra, uptime or whatever on that ulti isn't the biggest deal in the world. So I feel like this is still a pretty much anybody's game, and it really comes down to how well they play it. Another really big timing that's going to be coming up. Oh man, Raven is actually scouting out QO here. Is this Diffusal Blade? As long as he doesn't end up getting blown up by the Queen of Pain, I think that this is a really important pickup in the context of this game.
Yeah, I agree. I think the style Q has been going for so far, he's way more effective in these fights now. The longer he stays alive, the more chaos he's going to cause, and Sam H is going to be picked off here. He was hoping to get the Earth Spirit himself, didn't realize that the rotation had come in from the Nature's Prophet and the Lion. But Q becomes a much higher priority for TNC to deal with now. Like, they've been dealing with him, but now they kind of like have to deal with him, because if Phantom Lancer, once you have the Diffusal Blade, if you stay alive long in a fight, it's as good as winning the fight, essentially.
Well, and we do see 3 heroes down here in the bottom lane for TNC. They pick up a gem on the Queen of Pain, so gonna end up being able to scout out that Clinks if anything does happen to go awry. Meanwhile, Night Stalker, after going for the Iron Talon, went back for the Midas, so he's gonna be able to accelerate and farm much more than you would see any of these other MVP heroes. What do you think about this? Does this delay the timing of his Aghanim Scepter that much, or do you think it's fairly decent?
No, I think it's a calculated plan. AU is actually quite a big fan of the support Midas. He regularly does it. QQ's got one too, actually. So it's quite interesting that TNC both their supports have Midases, and there's no Midases in the enemy team. So it's sort of TNC saying, look, if your advantage is that you can spread out on the map and grind out economic advantage, and you're going to avoid the fights, well, we're going to buy 2 Midases, and all our heroes are going to scale.
Oh, and this is a scary moment right here. Dubu is going to be able to scout out this smoke as it comes through and break it, but actually Sam's going to be able to find him first. A nice stun, catches onto 2. They realize what's happening, and Dubu's suddenly a little bit afraid about what to do here. He's going to get jumped on, but still Sam is going to be alive as he ends up just slowly burning. Gets the silence onto Teehee, and they haven't actually ended up committing all that much. Sonic Wave is still available, but now jumping onto A, you're going to end up falling. Sonic Wave onto QO. Hasn't died as of yet, but it looks like he's going to end up popping from this Ancient Apparition ulti, but can they kill off Raven first? They are going to be able to. Gem on the ground, Sam H getting controlled, and Aegis is already going their direction. They pick it back up now, and trying to run away is going to be the Clinks. They've got 3 dead, and it looks like they're going to end up losing their carry, but QO goes in on the back lines. Can he bring them all down? That's the big question. Bringing Cuckoo low, not dead as of yet. He does finally fall. Gem is back on the ground again. Triple for him. He might just potentially be able to pick them all off. Ultra kill at 22 minutes, and that's the man you wanted on.
Yeah, and this is, I was talking about, PL just needs to survive long enough fights and he's going to win that fight, and having an Aegis is a pretty nice ticket to surviving long enough fights. I think that TNC there, the reason they stay around so long at the end is because they really wanted to recover the gem. They kill the Clinks and then they're like, okay, A is definitely dead. Bat tries to stay just to get the gem, and turns out that it just costs Bat his life, and they still lose the gem. But I mean, that whole sequence of events is kind of won by Dubu. Like, it looks so bizarre at the start, with the Earth Spirit just standing there on the hill, like creating a barrier between the rush where his team is and the enemy team, and they kind of TNC like circle around him like sharks circling their prey, eventually like bite away at him and kill him, and it looks like, what on earth is he doing? But it's because he's there, because he gives that information, because he creates that barrier. That's why they get the rush. That's why MVP are able to have a good fight at all. So it's phenomenal decision from Dubu.
Doing a really great job of it. I mean, and again, looking the fact that they used a lot of those spells on him, the A Blast did end up just applying that debuff to Q. It almost killed him, but he still was able to deal 4,000 damage in the fight. Just absolutely tremendous. And you do have Ember Spirit that's building towards this battlefield. You're going to have it. MP is right on top of him, though. Going to get the silence off while he was rolling in. Oh, that was such a good play by Dubu. Man, that's how you can tell if an Earth Spirit player is really solid. Just being able to lay down that stone in front of him as he was going in, and then lay out the silence as well. Really high-level stuff.
Yeah. So the smaller pickoff situation, MVP getting pickoffs on TNC every now and then, has been happening all game. The team fights, it still favors TNC. I mean, that previous fights, if there wasn't an Aegis, like 100% TNC won the fights. It's only the Aegis that won the fight for MVP.
Right.
But there's a kind of snowballing effect. You know, Kyo's got a Reaver now. Each time MVP gains something, they do get stronger, and it does come closer to not being able to have them. Well, Kyo does take quite a lot of damage, had the Ice Blast on him. Sonic Wave, obviously, Ag Scepter, so a short cooldown.
Oh, and they hold the tier 2 for the moment, gonna be able to get the deny. This does have the feeling though of one of those games where if you let TNC basically get what they want, eventually it's gonna roll back over the other direction. You can snowball pretty far with MVP's lineup, but again, these heroes scale incredibly well into the late game. The double Midas that they've got as well really is gonna help them out a lot. So we're gonna have to see how it goes, but TNC definitely are going to need to start winning some of these and making sure that they're in position to contest, particularly the next Roshan.
Yeah, I mean, the fundamental problem for TNC right now is that MVP have such control over the movements around the map. I mean, they still have all 6 of their towers up, right? TNC have, what, 1 outer tower up? So MVP, they've got Clinks that gets around the map quickly, Nature's Prophet that gets around the map quickly, and while TNC, they're mobile in terms of, like, if you're in a fight, you can get close to each other. He's going to get caught in the bottle and he's going to die. And this is the TNC to try and keep up economically with MVP. They're splitting up, but when they split up, they're the ones that get punished for it because of that, you know, global mobility that MVP have. And TNC, they'd be more than happy if MVP said, "Okay, cool, meet in mid lane 5v5." But MVP intelligently are not going for that approach, and TNC just have access to the map very locked down. It's scary for Ember Spirit to be split pushing up here when there's a Nature's Prophet with an Orchid.
Yeah. No, and this has really been the problem for me also, I'm wondering, is just, in general, the amount of damage and control that those two supports provide with the global presence coming in with the Orchid on the Nature's Prophet, and the Clinks always being a bit of a threat as well. You really do have to wonder, like, is this Ember Spirit going to need to go back for some more defensive items after this? Because I don't think that just the Battle Fury is enough to deal with a revered up PL, and then on top of that, going into a Daedalus is just so scary when you think about the blink that's already up now on the Lion. Febi's about to reveal it in a second in their next fight.
I mean, the Lion's got Ether Lens on top of the blink already. Yeah. He's looking good. And this is, by the way, I want to say this is something important because people had this way when they analyze MVP, and I think it's because people weren't used to seeing them, and they came out at the major and then a few tournaments since. People assume that all they do is fights, and they are currently winning this game by avoiding fights. That's what they're doing. So it's you can't pin down MVP as like a only fighting team. They're getting a lot of pickoffs. Here we go. Here's another pickoff. Queen of Pain gonna be caught out and killed thanks to that nice ward on the what we call it the Tinker wards. Yeah. On the side of the map that you can barely even see. But it's the reason MVP are winning this game right now is because they are avoiding taking actual fights. That's it.
Well, and they're taking the ones that they need to. I mean, that movement right there, also the smoke, they were able to break the smoke as they were heading into the trees, realizing, hey, somebody's over here, let's place down a ward, and they find the Queen of Pain. It is definitely just very calculated movement by MVP, and I feel like it's almost getting to the point now, actually, he's just going to be able to jump forward, catch on to Sam, misses the Earth Spike as he was uphill and they didn't have vision. But yeah, it's starting to get to the point now where maybe QO has enough items with the heart completed that it's starting to get a little bit out of TNC's control. They need the Sonic Wave. They need a whole lot of damage to come out rather rapidly. And, tried to get the catch there. Isn't going to be able to do it. Earthspike going back the other direction. This is already the AA debuff being applied, and QO is dropping low. They might be able to find this kill. AU dropping low as well, and looks like MVP are going to be able to back out for the moment. Tons of damage, though, from T. He gets a double already, and looking for a bit more. They end up throwing out the Sprouts. Raven is going to be up front and center, and QO actually dropping low. He is going to fall. Suddenly, 3 are dead. They're going to bring down Forev as well. His BKB's pop, but they don't even care. Lion is the only one left alive, and it might not be for long as Febby blinks on out of there. Get me away. My God.
And this is what I said, right? They were winning the game by avoiding fights, and they walked straight into team fights, and doesn't go well for them. And this is the reason MVP were applying that pressure is because the Queen of Pain is still dead. But the sort of scrapey way in which the fight broke out and what wasn't like that neat for anyone to withdraw or easily take the fight meant that the Queen of Pain would respawn into the fight, and there wasn't any big advantage gained from MVP before then. So I kind of agree with you. Like PL Hearts, big item makes it more difficult, but I don't know. TNC, the tools that they have are so immense that I feel like he needs more than that. The Hearts is not. I mean, we saw in that fight, like the quad ulti didn't even hit him. Like he would have been burst down almost instantly at the start of the fight if the quad ulti hit him. It was like the AA ulti a few spells and the quad came through and the ulti actually missed him. They killed him afterwards, but
Right.
yeah, TNC is still. It'll be a reminder to MVP. Like, look, the reason you've gotten ahead in this fight is because of the tactical approach, and you're not quite ready to take those fights full, head on.
Yeah, and we're gonna see if they're gonna be able to do it again. It's also the Ember Spirit now starting to go back for those defensive items like we talked about. I think part of it also was the huge cleave damage that came out from Teehee already with the start with all the creeps that were around there. So just in general, a really bad fight for MVP to take. And I think that they really do need the next Roshan if they want to try and breach high ground. Maybe try and keep on building up their lead, starve out TNC a little bit, needs to be the play. And they're certainly capable of doing that with the Clinks. He's always going to be a threat, so we'll see how they end up trying to take it. But it's also worth noting you're getting into bigger items for TNC. Ancient Apparition has 2 components and about to be 3 components of his Aghanim Scepter, and as soon as that comes out, it's a game changer in terms of how they're going to have to approach these fights.
Yep. His Axe is going to be really. I mean, in a situation where they struggle to lose. I mean, there hasn't been a proper team fight that TNC have lost this game, right? They've lost to pickoffs. That's it. They've lost to pickoffs and split push, but the team fights are already favoring them. If they get to AA Axe, it's kind of the cherry on top. It's kind of like that's the end of that. But he actually goes back and buys the gem there, so gonna delay it a little bit. But
what a team player! Support life.
Yeah. The gem is more important right now. I mean, this is how they like what they're losing on is vision, map control, map accessibility. They need to have a gem. If you just look at this area of the map right above where they're standing right now, the amount of vision up for MVP is immense.
Yeah, it really is, and it's all invis reveal as well. They're dewarding everything. It does look like they're realizing that a movement could be coming this direction, and God, MVP would love to fight in this region if they've got all of that great vision advantage. I mean, that's the thing that's also crazy about it, is that they've got this vision advantage into a Night Stalker at night. Like, how much more could you want out of that? That's wonderful stuff, and he's not really going to be able to get an Aghanim Scepter anytime soon. They are going to move in to the Roche Pit themselves. It's actually going to respawn right as they walked in there. AU spotted it on his way out, but I don't know if they can actually take this. They're going to end up running into the Clinks, and he pops his BKB, turns to maybe try and fight. They're going to pull back QO, and I think that they might be able to bring down Sam. A lot of damage coming in. A-Blast is going to be able to connect onto one. This is looking like it might actually be okay for MVP. They've already brought down one. QO is dropping low, and Teehee is going to end up getting ran down into the Roche Pit, reapplying Magnetize, and he's going to fall. PL gets the kill, and that just, it was not a clean fight.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very messy initiation. The problem is that they commit to trying to go on the Clinks. The Ember Spirit is at the Clinks. The Clinks BKBs, they have to pull back. At the same time, Ancient Apparition going to be caught here too.
Oh, QQ.
At the same time the bat caught the PL, not everyone was going on the PL, and there the Heart did do its job, because you've got a Heart PL, you've got a BKB Nature's Prophet, a BKB Clinks, and if you're not coordinated on TNC, it's difficult.
Oh, Sonic Wave connects. Febby dropping low, not dead as of yet. QO goes on to the Queen of Pain, and Clinks actually just finished it off. Teehee's going to drop too. They're 4 dead. They're going to end up losing this lane of barracks potentially.
Just be the whole game.
Oh my goodness!
It's a dieback from the Queen of Pain, and it's the whole game. MVP couldn't win a fight. As soon as they do win a fight, it's disastrous, right? Because that was like the one aspect of the game they didn't have an advantage. They have an advantage in terms of map control, split push, pick-off potential, but they didn't have a team fight advantage. They managed to overcome that hump because TNT take a bit of a sloppy initiation, and yeah, this is what results from it.
I mean, you got to give credit to MVP in this one. TNC's draft looked on paper like it should have just completely rolled over them, but MVP, like you were saying, avoiding those fights consistently, made sure that they didn't end up allowing TNC to snowball off of those, and they are going to kill off Tubu as he tries to roll away, but at this point, it feels like it might just be a little bit too little too late. AU, he's going to get ran down, and all of his mana gone. He is going to fall. Sam is also going to get chased down here, and GG ends up getting call. MVP.Phoenix take one away from TNC here in a really big game, and Best of 3. They're looking good already.
Yeah, it's. I just really like pointing out the nuance because it's people have this way of reducing aggressive teams to just aggression, and the funny thing about that is that 80% of the top Dota teams right now are very aggressive teams, and sure, both these teams are aggressive, and you might think this game is decided on fights, and then you'd think TNC have an advantage because they have a better fighting lineup. But MVP play their draft to its strengths. They use their pushing power, their split pushing power, their ability to gain advantage without taking the fights. And then once they have a big enough advantage and control of the map, and by the way, the fight that they finally did win, a lot of that's also due to map advantage, right? TNC were kind of smoking into the abyss, like hoping something would happen. Suddenly there's a clink, suddenly there's a peel. They must react, whereas MVP can see everything all the time. And MVP, I just think, kind of methodically approaching the game from the strengths that they have, and it absolutely pays off.
All right, well, we're going to be back in just a little bit. Again, game number 1, going to MVP.Phoenix. We're going to see if TNC can bounce back. It certainly was a pretty evenly contested game, even though there were no towers taken by TNC in the end. It was a lot closer than it ended up looking at the end of the day. So stick around, everybody. Again, Lyrical Dota as well as Scant, your 2 commentators. We'll be back in just a little bit.